Welcome to What Drives You with your host, Mike Gourdet. Human solution consultant from Seattle, Washington. It is now time to sit back, buckle up for the show that drives the asking question of what drives you. And now your host, Mike Gourdet.
And welcome to this week's episode of What Drives You, the show about why we do the things we do. I'm your host, Mike Gourdet, Human Solutions Consultant here in Seattle, Washington. And this is the last show of the dreaded year 2020. Today on today's show, we're going to talk to an architect turned executive coach, and then we're going to talk about reality. I know everybody wants that topic. And the question of the day, which is going to be around, what do you think? What do you think is the question around the new year? Yes, resolutions. So stick around. We'll be right back with our interview, and then we will move on to what is reality. And welcome to this week's interview. I'm here with Ruqaya Ibrahim of Ruqaya Ibrahim Coaching. Is that right? Did I get it right?
Yes, you got that right.
Okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing great today. How's everything with you?
Well, I'm in Seattle, so the weather sucks.
I can't say the same about that here, so I'm sorry for that.
No, I don't think you really are. I think I'm jealous, and I think you're happy that you can say that weather is nice down there in the Bay Area in California, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's really nice, especially compared to New York. I used to live there. And it would be snowing and like too cold at this time, but I'm grateful to be here now.
You know my pain. So we don't have any snow right now, but it's gloomy. Okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I started off as, like what I used to do is like I was an architect. This is my background. And now I went through a transition and a career shift that now I'm a leadership coach. And I work with frustrated professionals who feel stuck with the work environment, the experience that they have, and they want to achieve extraordinary results. So I work with them in building their confidence and helping them get there. Yeah.
And what made you transition from being but an architect to a coach? How did because those are two, you're working with your brain and drawing and measurements and things, and the other you're working with people. How did you make that move?
Yeah, actually it was like a very interesting process because like going into architecture, it was sort of it's still my passion as well. And I went to that career like just full on, like I was excited about everything. And I think what sort of like started this idea is that over like 3 or almost like 4 years of working as an architect, I had like different experiences with the teams that I was working with, the kind of the work that I was doing. So I noticed that with some teams, I was like happy and like motivated to get the work done. Other teams, I was sort of, like I just wanted to get the job done, even though technically it was the same thing. So I was like really curious about that. And like at the peak of one of my frustration moments, like I looked around and I noticed that I was not the only one who was having that experience. And a lot of people around me were having it as well. So I decided that I was going to shift the work experience for like architects.
Okay.
So I looked things up and I was like Googling like literally how to be happy at work. And one thing led to another. And then it led me to this master's program of social organizational psychology. This is where I applied, and this is actually where I got my coaching training.
Okay. Was that part of the curriculum for that degree?
Yes, because we go into we study about like HR, about consulting, about executive coaching, and mainly about the human behavior in the workplace.
Okay.
So that's a core part of it.
Perfect. Okay. So talk about your passion a little bit more with either this or the architecture. Talk about that. What's your passion?
Okay. So I think like for both of them, for architecture and coaching, I have a passion for the act of creation.
Mm-hmm.
Because in architecture you get to create like buildings and things out of nothing.
Right.
And I noticed that even like when I have a coaching conversation with a client, we get to co-create something. We get to co-create you know, how they could tap into their potentials, how they could design their lives and like craft their path, instead of just settling for what they have right now. So like what is the vision that they want to get at? And this is where we get to, explore and co-create together. So this is something that I'm really passionate about.
All right. Okay. And tell me what
Yeah.
drives that.
What drives that? I feel like I
Yeah.
have the desire to have an impact on the collective consciousness in a sense of like one person at a time.
Mm-hmm. Can you
So
go ahead?
like yeah. So like when I work with clients, I don't like just to work on a surface level, but I like to go deep with them, explore like what are their values, what are like their limiting beliefs, and just help them to break free from what is like stopping them, what is like holding them back. Because I feel like once we tap into those like unlimiting beliefs and be able to free ourselves from them, it's like this is where we get to create that sustainable change. That makes sense.
Okay. You did
Yeah.
mention the collective consciousness. Can you describe that for the viewers if they don't know what that means?
Yeah. So I feel like, like those limiting beliefs, we all in a way share them.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, for instance, our views on work or like success on, like you have to work hard to get money or like you have to work hard to succeed. This is not just a belief of one person, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like a belief that we have as a collective. But then, working with each person, helping them shift that, I feel like this could create a ripple effect in a way. Because working with one person, they could change the experience that they could create for themselves and for others. And the more people, like get awareness around that, like we get awareness as a collective.
Okay.
Like in a way,
Mhm.
slowly, like some of those beliefs we would just let go of it and like go to like a higher level in our consciousness.
Okay. All right. That sounds good.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you process through these types of things with somebody.
Like in a coaching session or
Yeah.
in what sense?
Yeah, in the coaching session. So for those who don't know what coaching is or might not understand the coaching process, what do you do? What is it that you do as a coach?
Okay. Yeah. So like whenever I start working with a client, sometimes some clients come up with, okay, like this is my goal. Other clients would go into coaching and they want to identify their goals there.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that we do first is like getting to know, like, okay, this is the goal that you want to work on, like, but what is underneath that? And also like asking the questions of like, okay, like what is the dream or like what is the vision that you want to get to? Like for instance, if we get to meet 1 year from now, what is it that you want to have or like create it at that point in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Because any goal that we set in that session and like in the following sessions, it would be great if it connects to like a bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that's just like standing alone. So people will be motivated with the vision, and then we could be flexible about the approach and about the plan that we have. So as I said, like we get to start with a vision, and then in our way to that vision, we get to see like, okay, like what are the limiting beliefs that are like stopping you from that? So I use sometimes some of the NLP techniques to work with clients of letting go of their limiting beliefs And then
Okay.
also like supporting them in identifying their values, because like when we set goals that aligns with our values, we tend to be like more motivated and, you know, like more encouraged, more empowered
Mm-hmm.
to make it happen.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned
Yes.
NLP, that's neuro linguistic programming. Can you describe a little bit about that?
Okay. Yeah. And you know what, like it depends on the client and also like where they are, because you know, like some of the NLP techniques, it's also about um linking, you know, like working with the belief and also like linking it with the movement. So I get the clients, it's, we're not just sitting down having a conversation, but like sometimes, you know, I get the client to like stand up and like move from one point to another and like explore and like having something as the limiting belief, or like as, okay, like for instance, they would have an object and like this is their limiting belief, and then we would be able to work not just in our heads, but like getting out of our heads and like seeing things on the open, because basically it's like the study of excellence, like
Mm-hmm.
the neuro linguistic programming.
Right.
So there are a lot of ways that we could, you know, like, how do I describe this? Um, like I think, yes, like basically when it comes to the limiting beliefs, like linking the new vision that we get to, or like the you know, the future goal to like a sensation. And like once we get there, or like, you know, in a room, one person gets to point A to point B, see, this is like the goal there. What is like, how can they lock that sensation in their body sometimes? Because sometimes, you know, like you could like pressure your palm or something. This is something that would remind you of that experience. So like
Okay.
there's something called like the circle of excellence. Like you would visualize that you could go into that circle and, you know, tap into like, what does it taste, how does it taste, what does it look like, how does it smells like, what is it, like what are all the senses that you could connect to when you reach that, you know, space of excellence.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
All right. So you're talking a lot about associating thoughts with actions
Yeah, and like also with feelings and
and
sensations.
right, and feelings. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for describing that. Do you have any other final thoughts about what we talked about? What your passion is, what drives it, anything like that?
What drives it? Yes. Oh, yes. Like something also like I'm passionate about in coaching is like having that mind body connection. And that's why I tend to, you know, like find those like physical practices with clients, something that could be very sustainable in terms of like helping them getting the results that they want, and also like sustaining it, because it's also like associated with a movement. And for instance, like some practice called the centering practice. Not sure if you heard of that or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, it's like a way to get the client, you know, like grounded and like getting present. So like having small practices would help people over time, even though it requires like small movement. But you know, like in our bodies we have this innate intelligence, and this is something that sometimes we forget to tap into.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, like, when we communicate to someone, like 90% of what we say is nonverbal. So having like this alignment between what we say and how we show up in terms of like or like the energy that we bring into the room, I feel like this is something that is, you know, like really important in our success.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. We're about out of time. Thank you for joining us today,
Of course.
even though it's gloomy here
Thank
and
you.
not there.
Funny here.
All right. So
Happy to
thanks a
be
lot.
here.
All right. And thanks, Ruqaya. We'll be back in just a minute with our main segment. If you have any questions for me, I'll let you know how to contact me. So thanks a lot. And we're back, and we're going to talk about reality today. I know that That may seem like an odd thing to talk about, but I'm going to start this off with a posit for you. The brain has no idea what is real and not real. I know you might want to stick a fork in my eye right now because you may not understand what I'm talking about. But let's break this down a little bit. The brain has no idea what's real and not real. It relies on input that is translated through impulses or electrical impulses, right? So it's basically like science, and I think I may have mentioned this in a past episode, but there used in the, I think in the 50s, there was a movie called The Brain, and it was this disembodied brain that was going around doing things. That's kind of the concept here. So the brain exists inside of our skull and is connected to our senses through nerve endings. And everything we see, touch, taste, smell, or hear is translated to the brain through electrical impulses. And then the brain decodes that. And then it processes it through all those experiences and filters and things that I was talking about about perception and things like that and beliefs. And then it determines what we're going to do next, if anything. So if you consider this from a maybe a very far off aspect here, the brain really kind of relies on our own sense of being, our own self-awareness, to really determine what reality is. And I know you still want to stick a fork in my eye because I may be sounding a little off, but let me put it to you this way. I know that you have had a dream that was so real that your body reacted, meaning you woke up, you screamed, there's some other things that happened, but your body created this. Now, I've mentioned this before. I have talked about it with the fight or flight response or anything like that, the anticipation of pain. The thing about this is that your brain has to decode these signals, and when you're dreaming, you are signaling the brain through memory processing, which is what most people or most neuroscience says that dreaming is all about. And your body is creating this physiological reaction, and we do this all the time. We do it when we dream. There are also things called hypnagogic hallucinations that you experience in wake time or transitioning from sleep to wake to sleep. Sensations such as a bright light going off, or a sound, or even a sensation of falling. Schizophrenics experience this when they hallucinate. When somebody is hallucinating, they really don't know that what they're hearing or seeing is not real. Okay, so think about this, because I'm getting to something that's really going to make you want to stick a fork. Reality does not exist. And there you go. There's no way, and I know this is a little out there. There's no way that I can prove that reality exists. All I can prove is that I'm in this external situation and I'm interacting with these objects. I can move around, I can talk to people, but there is nothing out there that can say definitively that my experiences in this realm is not a projection of the brain itself. I know that sounds a little hokey, and it is very into the philosophical side of thing, but I'm getting to a point here. So just hang out with me. There's a saying that there is no reality, there's only perception. And this is kind of where I'm going to bring this back in and reel it in, so you don't want to hate me too much. The thing about it is that there, even though we can't definitively prove that reality exists, we all have the agreement that it does. And that's kind of the real. That's what makes things real, is that we all move through our external worlds together and we agree on things, right? We agree that this table is hard. We agree that those are trees out the window. We agree that we agree. We label things. So that is about the best proof that we have that there is a reality, is that we all have this agreement of reality. When I say there's no reality, only perception, we come back to the idea that the stage that is set before us in our external world is merely an electrical impulse through those senses. You see what? Okay, so you see what I'm getting at here? Do you understand why I said what I said? Is that everything that I interact with, everything that I do in my daily life, is all a translation of electrical impulses that I'm experiencing. That's what makes my reality. And the reason why I say there's no reality, only perception, and you've probably heard this, I don't know if you have heard of, Dr. Phil used to say this all the time. There is no reality, only perception. When we experience things, we are experiencing things through those filters I was talking about in other shows, where that creates our perception, and the way that experience is translated in the brain is what becomes real for us. So I used to use this analogy a lot. If somebody is watching this that I used to know, you might remember this, but I used to carry a spoon around in my pocket when I was demonstrating this, because here's the simple idea that if I hold up a spoon, you know what a spoon is. We all know what a spoon is, and you can picture it in your mind. We don't have to have the agreement of the same spoon. It can be a big spoon, a little spoon, have the little fleur-de-lis designs on the end, whatever it is. The fact is that when I say spoon, you have a conceptualization of that spoon in your mind. And for the most part, spoons are just a part of our lives that we only think about when we're eating grapefruit or cereal or putting stuff in our coffee, or among other things. But here's the thing. If somebody stabbed me with a spoon, my perception of a spoon might be a little bit different than yours. I may have a fear response. I know that's a little out there. I'm actually taking that analogy from an old movie. So I'm dating myself way a lot in this episode. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner. One of the best lines in there is the sheriff of Nottingham tells his cousin, "I'm going to carve his heart out with a spoon," and then the guy was dumb, so he had to go and tell him because it would hurt more. So that's where I got this idea. If somebody tried to carve my heart out with a spoon, I might have some problems dealing with spoons. The rest of my life is called trauma. And I may have a trauma fixation on this implement that you don't. So I'm good. So when it comes to you, you don't have a problem with spoons, but if I go into a spoon store, I'm going to freak out. I know there's no spoon stores. Don't write me about that. I'm going to freak out. Or I'm going to have a physiological response. And here is how the brain doesn't understand reality. When we talk about PTSD, somebody who has some severe PTSD and they hear something that reminds them of what caused a trauma in their lives, they are going to react as if that is exactly what's going on right there. That's why we have these stories of soldiers coming home from war, hearing a car backfire, and they jump under the table because to them it's gunfire, because that sound has reminded them. And because trauma is a neurological, in a sense, we store that trauma in our body. And what we do is what the brain is saying is that this is how our reality is. So you see how this really strange thing that I said at the very beginning should be making some sense now. Our brain describes our reality to us. Now we can quibble over the fact that I can just tap on this thing and it's real, or you can hang with me and understand that when I tap on this table, my brain is translating impulses from my fingertips or my knuckles. And there's actually nothing there to confirm that except the electrical impulses from my eyes as it views the table, the electrical impulses from my pain sensors as I wrap my knuckles on that, and the electrical impulses from my ears as I listen to that. So am I making sense? Why is this important? Well, this is important because we often, again, I mentioned this in former episodes, we often think our concept of reality is what everybody thinks is reality, and that's not the case. And so when we meet somebody whose reality is different from ours, and this doesn't have to be something out there, it's not about hallucinating or anything, it's about two people who have come from two different walks of life are going to have two different ways of defining their reality. And we don't understand that because we have such a commonality of agreements here. This is the table, that's the rug, that's the chair, those are trees. And as long as we all agree on that, everything's cool and copacetic. Why? Because it's same and it's safe. The minute that I tell you the sky is not blue, the sky is actually green, is the minute we start having problems, right? Because there's a red, we call those red flags. Bloop. My definition of reality has suddenly come up against your definition of a reality, and it doesn't fit. And for us, when something doesn't fit, danger, danger, Will Robinson. That's why some relationship stuff is hard, because there's always going to be red flags, because we are all unique individuals based on the patterns of impulses our brain translates. I hope that makes some sense. And back to the point is that we need to understand that just because I define my reality a certain way, that doesn't mean that everybody else is going to define that reality that way either. It really, all of these things that I've been talking about this year has been around the way we process information and the way we translate that information into how we experience our world, our external world. And when you look at all these facets, you can look at what's going on in the world right now in this year of 2020, which is going to go down in history as one of the craziest times of our lives, because we agree on it. And we can see that all the behaviors that everybody has been freaking out about or talking about or thinking how weird or stupid, or that all these behaviors that we've witnessed, there is a logical, a real, and I use that term loosely, explanation for. Nobody has done anything that was completely outside of the realm of human behavior. And that might give you some comfort as we head into the new year. So thanks for listening. We'll be right back with the question of the day. Why do we fail to keep our resolutions? Hang on. Okay, I don't know if you are as tired of resolution talk as I am. Everybody talks about resolutions all the time around this time of year. Do you do them? Do you want to do them? Are you not going to do them? You hate them? Do you? My whole goal in New Year's is never to make a resolution, but that's making a resolution, right? But here's some of the ideas. Is that why? First off, why do we make resolutions? It's part of our cultural, socio-psychological makeup around what I call a time anchor. A time anchor is any of these points in time in which we change our behaviors, right? Your birthday is a time anchor. The holiday season is a massive time anchor. And we have these all the time. So, for instance, in mid-September, what starts appearing in the candy aisles? Halloween candy. We are being prepped for the holiday season. And what is the holiday season about in our culture? We would like to think it's about all these sort of high ideals, but in the actual sense of the word, it's commercialization. This is what sets off the tone for everything that we're doing. We just put all these wonderful, I'm not trying to dog out the holiday season, okay? So don't get mad at me. I'm pointing out that we have these holidays for reasons, but what's driving them is commercialization. So in mid-September, we have Halloween candy appearing on the shelves. Okay, so we know it's coming. Halloween, we get closer, we start thinking about all the fun stuff. So what's one of the first things that we do for Halloween is that we suspend our reality for a bit. We have these fantastic things going on, whether, and we don't need to go into all the belief systems around it, but everybody's dressing up in costumes, which is a fantasy. And then we are going around and getting candy. So people are buying candy. Okay. And that's just this nice, sweet thing. It's not this huge deal. There's not generally speaking, there's not a lot of pressure on us to worry about Halloween. Once Halloween's over, what do we go into right away? We start getting ready for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And Thanksgiving is this time anchor about what? If you said football, you're almost there. Family, football, togetherness. And what happens? We have the pressure building because now we have to invite family. We have to get the turkey. We have to bake the turkey. Or fry the turkey, or whatever your turkey preference is. And we have this stuff, and then we're going to have in-laws and ex-laws and all these other laws coming over, and we're going to sit around and we're going to try and have fun. And there's a lot of tension that may or may not be your experience, but that's just the fun thing about it. So it's this big time anchor about togetherness. And then we move on to Christmas, which is another increased pressure. If you kind of look at it from this economic standpoint, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, because Christmas is the biggest shopping time of the year. That's why it's such a big pressure situation. We got a lot of stress going on in Christmas. And it's about, we have all these things about what Christmas is really about, but we spend a lot of time getting pressured to buy stuff for people. We're going to re-steal stuff for people. There's all this stuff surrounding a lot of happiness and good cheer and all this other stuff, right? Well, we need a release from that. So what do we got? We have New Year's. We've got the end of the old and the beginning of the new. We have a life cycle of a year, a death, if you will. And that death is representative of this time anchor. We get ready. We traditionally, it's about a party, a release. We go get drunk, we party, we kiss at the end, bringing in the new year, and then everything goes back down, and we start getting ready for the next holiday, which is what, Valentine's Day? Yeah, Valentine's Day. And what do? We want to create this idea that this is a new beginning, so we set goals or resolutions. Now, the big thing is resolutions don't really work. For 80% of the population that has set a New Year's resolution, 80% of those go away within about 2 to 4 weeks from New Year's. Now, why is that? I bet you if you've listened to the podcast through the last 14 weeks that you can answer that before I even say anything, because it all comes down to pain generation. There is some level of pain. One of the biggest focuses of the new year is health. And this is one of my pet peeves, is that before COVID, I used to go to a gym, and I would go around 7:00 in the evening. I would do my workout. Everything was fine until January 2nd. January 2nd, everybody's in the gym at 7:00 in the evening. So I have to stop. I have to stop going for, guess how many weeks? 2 weeks. So that was my routine, is to stop going to the gym every 2 weeks, or 2 weeks into the 1st of January. Because in 2 weeks, everybody has figured, I'm not doing this anymore. Why? Because there's pain associated with this thing. And it's very interesting, because we know we want to get healthy. So we set that goal, and then we start going, but we quickly realize how uncomfortable this situation is. And it doesn't take long for our brain to go, no, we're not doing this anymore. And then one day you're sitting in your chair at home, and you're going, I need to go to the gym. I set this goal for myself. And your brain is saying, no, it's okay. Just relax. Just stay right here. And you don't generate what's called activation energy to get your butt up and go to the gym. And that's where the problem occurs, is from the point at which you can't get your activation energy up enough to get to the gym, because most people who can get to the gym will do the stuff. And that follows almost all resolutions. If your resolution doesn't motivate you, and that's a little bit of a misnomer, you're not going to follow through. If your resolution is too vague, you're not going to follow through. I know somebody right now is probably listening to this is smirking at me right now, because I hate resolutions, but I do them. And that's why we have this big time anchor. We have this release of pressure, and then we want to set goals that are going to get us moving again. And then it generates discomfort and pain, and we have to battle old habits. And for 80% of the population, we fail. Maybe that's too strong a word, but we don't follow through with that. I know that's really bad. So what can you do? Well, if you're a resolution person, what you can do, there's tons and tons of information out there. I'm sure you can look it up. I did. It's massively crazy, but the science of it is it needs to be specific, but not too specific. It has to have some specificity to it. It can't be just like, I'm going to lose weight. It has to be, I am going to lose X amount of pounds by X date, by doing whatever. That's a specific goal. It can't be too specific, because then we ramp ourselves into a very uncomfortable position. If I say I'm going to learn how to do 100 push-ups by Friday, that's not going to happen, and I'm going to really not really follow through with that goal. The second one is that it needs to be emotionally engaging. One of the interesting things that we do when we set a goal is we actually take ownership of it if it's specific enough and we understand it enough. So we want to go do that goal. The other thing that we also do at the very same time is we realize that we have not achieved that goal, so we are in an active failure role. What is that called? That's called cognitive dissonance. So while we own that goal, we also know we haven't made that goal. So we have pain going on about the struggle between having the goal and failing to get the goal. And that can create a problem where we get out of it, or it can create a situation where we can channel that energy into the goal itself. But in emotional, you hear this all the time as this is the why of the goal. What's your why? It's not about losing that 10 pounds for most people. It's about what are you going to feel like when you lose that 10 pounds? What are you going to look like? What is really important to you about that goal? And once you understand that, the ownership is a lot better. And you have a lot of dopamine going towards getting that goal. And dopamine is what creates motivation. Another thing to think about is the goals should align with your enduring strengths. And strengths are things that you do over and over again naturally. And if you have goals that don't follow those, you're less likely to do those. So if you're a creative person and you like to create things, it's going to be a lot easier for you to create goals about creating things than if you are going to create goals about strict rules and regulations. Does that make sense? So those are three things that you can do. The biggest formula that you will find if you look on it is called the SMART goal. Go check those out. It's that specific, measurable, attainable. What's R? Oh no, I forgot R. And time oriented. I'm not even gonna worry about it. So that is that question. Why we don't follow through with our resolutions. So I hope you've enjoyed the show. Here we're heading into the new year. I hope you will return next year where we can start fresh again. Bye-bye.